Welcome to another weekend edition of Second City Sports Zoom Style.
Zoom Style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sydney Brown. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the IG at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
And you can follow this show, Second City Sports, along with the other podcast programming from We Are Regal Radio, a.k.a. War Media, by simply going to our website at www.weareregalradio.com. You could also go to wherever you download your podcasts on all podcast platforms, including Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, Apple, Spotify, and that iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type in War on Anchor. That's WARR on Anchor. And you can watch us on YouTube at War Media. Once again, at WARR Media. You can not only listen to us, but watch us do our thing.
All right. Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends.
Yes, we got a lot of things to cover. So let's get to it, Lakeena. We'll start off with some National Football League talk. Is championships weekend, championship Sunday to be exact. We have both the AFC and the NFC title games taking place. First up is the NFC title game, which will take place in Lambeau Field at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on Fox. It's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady, taking on Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers. Earlier in the season, the Green Bay Packers were smashed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road, 38-10. Lakeena, we'll dig right through this thing as we always do. Here's my headline for this game. What happened in the regular season, I'm just going by common sense, is not going to be the same story.
Well, I think there are multiple reasons for that, right? I mean, it was in September, and they were in Tampa, and it was warm.
October.
Early October, I think, and it was warm, and it just so much has changed. I mean, I think the Bucs kind of caught the Packers off guard, so they were kind of on a roll early in the season, and Tampa Bay just came right in like gangbusters. But that's not going to be the case this time around. At least that's just my opinion. The defense, the Packers defense is a lot better. They're actually now like in the top 10 or 12. So overall, and then the defense of Bucs is pretty good too. And then of course you had the Brady versus Rodgers matchup that everyone's looking forward to. So I'm excited to see which team will make the bigger play. I mean, whether it's going to be a little snowy, a little cold down in Lambeau. So Brady's used to it because he played in New England for many years. But wonder how the other players for the Bucs are going to adjust to that. So. Will weather be a factor? That's going to be a lot of questions that people are going to be asking.
And speaking of the weather, the Buccaneers are 1-16 when the temperature is 32 degrees or colder. Let me repeat that. I heard this morning. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in the history of their franchise, are 1-16 when the temperature is 32 degrees or colder. Guess which game they won when it was colder than 32 degrees? I actually watched this game on YouTube last night.
Oh, really? Oh, which one was it? Was it here?
No.
It was here. Oh, okay. Was it? Wait, were they? They could have been in Green Bay, could it?
No.
Okay.
I'll give you one more guess.
Oh, one more. Was it? Oh, was it in New York where they're playing the Giants or the Jets?
No, but you were close. The 2002 NFC title game, it was between the Buccaneers and the Philadelphia Eagles. That was the last game at that terrible Veterans Stadium.
Yeah.
The Buccaneers won that game 27-10. Of course, Rondé Barber wrapped up that game with a pick six return for a touchdown. Of course, everybody was excited in Philadelphia. Oh, this was the time that the Eagles would go to the Super Bowl. Of course, it wasn't meant to be. Of course, a couple years later, they got T.O. and then went back. But that was the second of four straight, if I have correctly, four straight title game appearances for the Philadelphia Eagles. That was their second of four in a row. Of course, Tampa Bay got them. Of course, people may not remember, but early in that season, Philadelphia beat the Buccaneers 20-10, and there was an ugly game. Of course, I think the year before or a couple years before that, Philadelphia beat Tampa Bay in the playoffs. Of course, that was when Tony Dungy was the head coach. But at that time in 2002, Tampa finally got over that hump against Philadelphia. That's the only game in history that they have won when the temperature was colder than 32 degrees. The game time temperature for that game was 29 degrees. So
And it
the
was very,
Buccaneers overcame that day.
it was very, yeah, it was very windy too that day. I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes. But getting back to present day, if you remember the game plan for the Buccaneers defense, it was to blitz Aaron Rodgers every chance they got. Of course, it worked, and Aaron Rodgers had his worst game of the year. It's not going to be the same story. My question is for the Buccaneers defense, can you disguise coverage to fool Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers is not easily fooled, and the question will be when to blitz and when not to blitz, because Aaron Rodgers, as we've seen throughout the season, he can pick you apart, especially using his tight ends like Robert Tonyan.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So it will be just interesting to, Rogers is actually pretty good at sort of, recognizing, the coverages, the disguised coverages too. So, and I'm sure, I'm sure the defense will try to kind of blitz him, probably even more so that maybe the Packers have to depend on Aaron George and the rest of the running backs too. So, like I said, it's going to depend on, okay, will the running game be a factor? Who will be blitzing more? Because you got to think the Packers are pretty good at blitzing too. So you wonder, are they going to be blitzing Brady? So, and he's not very mobile either, especially with, being 43. So it'll be interesting to see what the Packers defense have in store for Mr. Brady.
You're listening to the weekend edition of Second City Sports along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown as we break down the NFC title game between the Green Bay Packers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It will take place this Sunday at 2:05 p.m. at Lambeau Field. Going back to the Buccaneers defense, Lakeena, I wonder who's going to cover Devontae Adams for the whole game. Will you double him? And if that's the case, will leave the other Green Bay wide receivers open like Valdez-Scantling and Lazard? And as I mentioned just a second ago, will Robert Tonyan have a big game for the Packers from the tight end position?
Well, yeah, because they'll have a very Herculean task, whoever it is. Well, whether it's Winfield Jr., whether it's Jordan Whitehead, he's questionable, or Sean Murphy Bunting, I think. But I think they're both of them are questionable, but I think they should be cleared to play, from what Bruce Arians said. Unfortunately for the Bucs, Antonio Brown, we just found out about just about an hour ago, maybe a half hour ago, that he's going to be out. So that's going to be a big factor too. I mean, will Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, will those guys be a factor too? Will the Gronk be a wild card for the Green Bay secondary? So of course that's another Herculean task too. Whoever has to guard Gronk. So it'll be interesting to see whose secondary steps up.
Yeah, let's focus in on the running games for both teams. Of course, the Green Bay Packers last year, they leaned heavily on Aaron Jones. This year, he's still putting up good numbers, but not as much, only because the ball is in Aaron Rodgers' hands. Of course, Aaron Rodgers had an extraordinary career season, passing for 48 touchdowns. He should be your league MVP. But with that being said, last year, Lakeena, in this spot, the Green Bay, they mirrored the San Francisco 49ers, which they ended up losing to in that title game last year by running the ball and playing defense. They got smashed up front. If you're the Packers, do you obviously what happened a year ago at this time will have to motivate you. But we said this all year, Lakeena, and we said this last year too during our radio show. Against physical teams, the Packers always fold.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be the same story, but it's got to be in their mindset coming into this game on Sunday.
Oh, look, I'm sure what happened last year where they just got bum rushed by the 49ers, I'm sure it's still etched in their brain. I think I heard one of their defensive guys, I forgot which one, say that, look, we remember what happened last year, and we don't want it to happen this year. So I'm thinking that I just said a minute ago, Adrian Amos, you got to wonder, is he going to have to guard Gronk, or, Darnell Savage, who's had a pretty good year, and also to Kevin King. I mean, those are probably going to have to be the unsung heroes for the Green Bay defense, and also in that front seven. Will they be able to slow down Leonard Fournette and Ronald Jones for the Bucs? I mean, that's going to be sort of another key factor here, the keys, if you will. Alan Lazard, will leave him open as well. I'm sure they're going to have like 12 guys, trying to guard Devontae Adams and Robert Tonyan, like you said, Sid. I mean, this is going to be very interesting to see what they do here. Will they depend on the running game? Which team will use their running game more, I think. And, I think this is going to be a very interesting and very close game. I'm hearing people say that it's going to be the Packers in the blowout. I just don't think that's going to be the case.
Unless Brady's hurt, I don't see that either. We'll make our picks later. But I'm glad you brought up the running game, especially for Tampa Bay. Both Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette have to have monster games for Tampa Bay because, as you mentioned, Brady's 43 years old, and the offensive line has to be up to par as well. No silly penalties or anything of that nature. They had to have a stonewall mentality, of protecting Tom Brady. Like we said before, if you protect Tom Brady, great things will happen. Yes, he's going to miss some throws because of his age, but if you give him a solid running game, it takes pressure off of him. If you don't have a solid running game, and we saw that in the last couple of years with New England, his stay with New England, minus that 2018 championship, he's not up to the challenge given his age. So one of my keys for Tampa Bay is, can you run the ball consistently and can you wear down that Packers defensive front?
Also, moving the ball down the field. I mean, I'm sure both teams are going to want to keep the other off the field by, using the running game, probably a little bit more than they usually do. So that's going to be another key too. I mean, will either team use the run game to sort of melt the clock, keep the other, guys off the field and just, win it that way? I mean, I don't think this is going to be like one of those 9-6, 10-7. I don't see that. I think it's going to be in the 20s. But I think don't be surprised if, at least early on, that whoever wins the toss or whatever, who has the ball early in the first quarter, will probably, depend on the running game more.
Also, too, Lakeena, I'm glad you brought up this guy's name from Tampa Bay, Rob Gronkowski. He's been MIA throughout these playoffs. This is a perfect spot for him to have a big game, especially as I mentioned before. If Tampa Bay has a strong running game, it opens up options for Tom Brady, especially down the field. Rob Gronkowski, this is what Tampa Bay brought him for in the offseason, luring him out of retirement. And this is a big stage for Gronkowski. He's been there before, obviously, with Brady in his days with New England. He's been MIA so far. This is the time for him to step up. I'm looking forward to him having a big game.
Oh yeah, I think he's due for a big game, and that's why I said I feel whether it's Amos or King, whoever has to guard Gronk. I mean, look, it's always a Herculean task to guard Gronk for many reasons.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure if maybe if you try to make him a non-factor, perhaps maybe try to do what you can to kind of contain him, then maybe Brady would have to, maybe have to depend on Godwin, I should say, and Mike Evans, if they're able to play, because they're both banged up. So we'll see, because we already know Antonio Brown's out, so that's going to be very interesting to see the health of some of these teams. I mean, they have a lot of guys banged up in Tampa, especially on the offensive side. So you kind of wonder, will that be a factor too?
I think it would be a factor, and maybe even bigger factor, if they cannot run the ball effectively. And we brought up Tom Brady's name again, bringing up the Packers defense. When and if, now I don't think it's a question of if, but when do you blitz Brady if you're the Packers? Because I don't think that you're going to do it the majority of the time or every time. That's just not going to happen. When are you going to pick your spots to blitz Brady? Will it be on the second down, or will it be on third down when he's not expecting it? Like you mentioned, Lakeena, because of his age and lack of mobility. I think the question is for the Packers defense, can you pick the right time to surprise Brady and blitz him?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and then we saw it, in last weekend's game against the Rams. I mean, the Packers actually did pretty well, with the blitz, blitzing Jared Goff, and they actually sacked him a few times. So you got to think that they'll probably try to bring that same game plan to Brady, especially since, like we've been saying, Brady's 43, and we know he's not very mobile. Even when he was younger, he wasn't very mobile. He wasn't designed to be a mobile quarterback. So, and Aaron Rodgers, even though he just turned 36 a couple weeks ago, he's still pretty mobile, and I know he probably doesn't want to use it as much, since he's over 30. But I'm sure he'll bring it out if he wants to, if he needs to, if he has to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Aaron Rodgers can still get out there and run. He doesn't have his young legs like he did a few years ago, but like you said, if you're Green Bay, you really don't want to have to depend on that because Aaron Rodgers is not Michael Vick. That's why you have Aaron Jones back there running the ball. So if Rodgers has the chance to run out of danger, he can still do it. But if you're Green Bay, you don't want to have to depend on that for the whole game.
Oh, no, absolutely not. So that's probably the one thing that you don't want to do. And like I said before, I mean, it's going to be what the game plan is. And like we've been saying, I'm sure, look, the Packers remember what happened last year, the 49ers. I'm sure they remember what happened earlier in their earlier meeting back in early October against the Bucs. So, but they're in their turf, and it's going to be cold. So that's, that'll be interesting to see what they do there.
Yeah, it will be interesting. Let's see who do we have winning this game. I will go first, even though our picks don't count, but that's behind the scenes. But as hard as you know what I am cheering for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, I have to go with my head here. I'm going with the Green Bay Packers. I know this is Aaron Rodgers' first title game on his home turf at Lambeau. I just feel that Green Bay it's almost like last week. I think last week's game against the Rams, but I think it's going to be a little bit closer than what people think. It's not going to be the same story like it was back in early October. I just don't see it from either side. I think Tampa will kind of hang in there, but Green Bay will pull it out at the end. It may come down to a field goal, which I think special teams will be a factor as well, especially given the weather report. I don't think it's going to be as bad as people think, but in terms of the snow and the cold, it's going to be cold, but I think that Green Bay will have enough to push through, and I have them winning this game 26-23.
I'm also going to pick the Packers, and like I said, I think the score is going to be the 20s. I think I'm actually going to go beyond. I think Aaron Rodgers will have a final, game-winning drive. We've seen him do that, and I think he's going to give it to Devontae Adams. For that last-minute score, and it's going to be 28-24 Packers, and they'll be going back to the Super Bowl. And Lamont has the Packers, so it's a sweep there.
Hopefully it's a clean sweep of us being wrong as Chicago fans, but that too is another story. You're listening to Second City Sports Weekend Edition along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sidney Brown as we break down Championship Sunday from the National Football League. Let's move on to the American Football Conference title game. That's between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. This game will take place in Arrowhead Stadium Sunday at 5:40 p.m. Central Standard Time on CBS. The Kansas City Chiefs are coming off their victory last Sunday afternoon against the Cleveland Browns. Patrick Mahomes was knocked out of the game due to concussion protocol. He's on track to play this Sunday. On the flip side for Buffalo, they've won their two playoff home games against Indianapolis and against the Baltimore Ravens last Saturday night. They are coming in with high confidence. They are ready to go. Lakeena, I'll start with you from this headline. This should be an offensive shootout. Am I overreacting, or do I need to come back down to earth?
Well, I don't think you're overreacting. I think this could very well be a very high scoring game where we might see some 30s in this game. It could be first to 35 or 40 ends up winning it because both the defenses, they're opportunistic, but they're also very suspect. So I think it's going to be whose offense makes more plays. I mean, will Patrick Mahomes be 100%? And I think that's the factor because it's not just a concussion he's nursing. He's also nursing a toe injury that he's been having to deal with for the last couple of weeks. So will the running game be a factor for them? Do you try to will Clyde Edwards-Helaire, will he be able to play? Because remember, he didn't play last game. He's been, struggling with ankle injury. Will Darrell Williams be that guy? Will he sort of be the X factor here in this game? And for the Buffalo Bills, you got Devin Singletary, and of course Josh Allen with, you could probably say that he can make a case for MVP. But will Devin Singletary, will he be a factor in the run game for the Bills? And also too, I mean, of course, you got Stephon Diggs and some of the other wide receivers from Buffalo, and Josh Allen he's a little bit mobile too. We've seen him do it a few times this year, in some cases to win games. It's going to be very interesting though. Like you said, we have Cole Beasley, Dawson Knox. Will he be, sort of an X factor there? On the defense side, of course, you got Ed Oliver, the rookie from Houston. You got Quentin Jefferson. You got Micah Hyde, who's a veteran safety. Tre'Davious White, of course, who's a Pro Bowler corner. So I'm sure they're gonna try to blitz and try to take advantage of the fact that maybe Mahomes isn't 100%. So could the defense get a turnover? They did they did it against the Ravens. So if they can, they probably have to do it against the reigning NFL MVP. We shall see. What do you think?
Going to the Buffalo Bills, and I've been saying this to people all week, the running game has to be on point if you're Buffalo with Devin Singletary. You have to keep that Chiefs defense on its heels, and they're weak at the linebacking core, and that's what I'm going to bring up right now. Tyler Kroft, their tight end, and you mentioned Knox as well. If the running game is on point with Singletary, it opens up the game for Josh Allen. You can hit those two tight ends because, let's be honest here, Lakeena, Stephon Diggs is going to get double, probably triple covered at some point during the game. And on the defensive side for the Chiefs, especially in that secondary, Tyrann Mathieu, who had an interception in last week's victory over the Browns, he's a physical safety, so he's going to cover one of those tight ends, and they may use him to cover Stephon Diggs. It depends on what offensive formation that the Bills will use. So the running game is going to be key for Buffalo. Number 2, no penalties, no false starts, nothing to that extent, because even though it's still going to be a big crowd in Kansas City, the fans will still bring the noise, and the Chiefs can bring the intensity, especially on their defensive line. No penalties, period. They have to run the ball. You have to play discipline. So those are the 2 keys I'm looking for Buffalo from the offensive side of the ball.
And I would say, I think I'm glad you brought up the Chiefs defense. Like I said, Tyrann Mathieu, I'm sure we'll probably be seeing him and Stephon Diggs together a lot. That's probably what, I'm sure that's probably what's going to end up happening. And also, too, Daniel Sorensen and Shavarius Ward, you got to think, they'll probably be a factor, too. Nicole Hardman, the wide receiver, I think he'll probably get some touches as well, because I'm sure they'll have guys, the Bills will have some guys covering Kelsey. So wondering, also Tyreek Hill too. So that's those two guys, from the Chiefs you got to try if you're Buffalo. And, like we've been saying, look, this is the matchup we wanted in the AFC, the top 2 teams in the AFC. So you got to think, okay, look, I've been saying that the Bills, are right there. And look, the Raiders and, and some of the other, they gave you the formula. So I'm wondering, will the Bills use some of that formula that the Raiders use to, who beat the Chiefs earlier this year? Will they use the same formula, the blitzes, and, try to maybe make, Kelsey a non-factor? And, and then I think also, running the ball, they'll keep Mahomes and them off the field. I think that's going to be another factor too, because like you said, Sid, I mean, yes, it's not going to be a big they're going to be a big enough crowd, and they're going to make a lot of noise, and I'm sure they'll be a factor too.
You kind of stole my next question, bringing up Travis Kelce, but I'll ask it anyway. If you're the Buffalo Bills defensive coordinator, I forget his name, excuse me for my brief memory loss, who do you focus in on trying to, quote-unquote, stop more, Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill? Tyreek Hill's the fastest man in the NFL. And Travis Kelce, even though he's getting up there in age, he is very much effective. He's not slowing down. He operates in the middle of the field like anyone else in the NFL from that tight end position. Who do you stop more?
I don't. That's a good question.
Seriously.
I know. Like I said, it's going to be an interesting task, because you got the fastest guy in the NFL, and you got one guy who's getting close to 30, but is still one of the top tight ends in the league. So you're kind of stuck in the rock and the hard place if you're the Bills defense, because you're like, okay, do we go with one of the fastest guys in the league, or do one of the best tight ends in the league? Yeah, that's a coin flip there. They may have to do coin flips on the sidelines, unfortunately.
And that's why the Bills' front four is important to put pressure on Mahomes and stay disciplined. They can't get any penalties, either encroachment or pass interference or things along that line. Jerry Hughes leads Buffalo in sacks during the playoffs with 2. Harrison Phillips, their defensive tackle, has 1 sack as well. The Bills' defensive front, they have to get pressure on Mahomes. But here's the problem. Even though Mahomes, as you mentioned, is limited injury-wise this week, Even though with a bad toe, before that hit, he was still running around. And like we've been saying, you have to pick your poison. But I think Buffalo has to get pressure. You don't. I'm not going to say you don't have to sack him. Because obviously, you want to sack him, but you have to be disciplined enough because the offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy, who we will get to later on in this segment, they have the run pass option with Mahomes. If he's even 70% effective, they're still going to use Mahomes can even pitch you to one of his running backs, so they can pitch you to Kelsey too, which man, they cannot do here in Chicago. But with that being said, he has the option of doing that. So if you're Buffalo, you got to pick your poison. Yes, you have to pressure Mahomes, but you got to keep him in his lane so he won't run out of the pocket and kill you down the field.
Well, that's why the pass rush is going to be important for Buffalo. I mean, look, Ed Oliver, Mario Addison, Tremaine Edwards. I mean, those are guys. You know, I think they're due for big games. So if you could rush Mahomes, that way he won't have to, he can dink and dunk and perhaps use his legs, bad toe and all, and maybe limit him to sort of depend on the run game more. So I think you just got to be on your toes if you're the Bills defense, because I think the Chiefs can hit you with all different sides. They can run the ball and they can pass it too. So you gotta get rid of those and make one of them a non-factor, so that they'll have to depend on the other thing. So if that's a tough task if you're the Bills, but we'll see if they can do it.
And also too, with that Buffalo Bills secondary, you mentioned Teron Johnson, who has the record for the longest interception return for a touchdown in last week's victory over Baltimore. Can he make a big play? Micah Hyde, a veteran safety back there with his days with the Packers, I expected him to have a big game too. Will he cover Kelsey down the field? Will he cover Tyreek Hill? So can he make a play? Should it come down to the Bills secondary? I know the Bills as a group has the least playoff experience against the Chiefs, but it's all going to come down to execution and discipline. And when the Bills defense will have to make a play at some point during that game, when will it come? If it doesn't, it's going to be a long afternoon down there in Arrowhead.
Yeah, we saw what Johnson did against the Ravens. The Ravens, that was a game-changing 101-yard return for interception return for a touchdown. I mean, it looks like the Ravens are going to score, perhaps make it a game. I think it would have tied the game, I think, or at least got them a little bit closer. Johnson made that big play, and that was it. And then Lamar Jackson had his concussion that very next series. So So look, the Bills have shown that they're opportunistic with their defense. So if they can perhaps maybe make an opportunity and get a play done, it probably is going to be a very long day over in Kansas City.
Yeah, it's going to be a very long day, and also going to both teams, the run defense. Which one do you think is going to be more effective? I think that the Kansas City is going to be more effective on paper because, like I said, the Buffalo Bills didn't really run the ball that much in last week's victory over the Baltimore Ravens. We know, like you mentioned, Josh Allen, the Bills quarterback, he could absolutely run out of the pocket. But if you're Buffalo, unless you really have to, you don't want him to lead your team in rushing. That's why Devin Singletary is more important.
That's why
he has to have a big game.
Yeah, I think that's why he's going to be I think he's really going to be a big factor here. I think you don't look. You're trying to protect Josh Allen at all costs. So you don't want him to have to depend on him to rush, get those.
The defenses that Kansas City is going to come after him.
Yeah, so listen. We saw Devin Singletary in a couple of games this season. Rush for over 100 yards. So I'm thinking he's due for another 100-yard game. So I'm thinking that maybe the rush defense for the Chiefs. It's okay. I mean, they're not nothing to write home about. But they'll make the plays when they need to. So I think if you're Devin Singletary and the Bills, I think you probably are going to have to give them the ball probably more because I know, like you said, you don't want your quarterback to be leading and rushing. So leading your team in rushing. So that's the one thing you don't want to do. You have a running back who's very capable of doing that. So I think I think Devin Singletary is probably due for a big game on Sunday.
Yes. So who's going to be your winner to represent the AFC in Tampa Bay in 2 weeks?
You know what? I've been back and forth on this. Look, who the hell did I have in my Super Bowl pick? Who did I forgot? That's my we're the same age, so that's my old age. mile weight is showing, folks. I think I picked Buffalo early on, and look, I know people looked at me like I was crazy. Like, wait, but they're gonna beat the Chiefs. Look, the Chiefs have been good, but I'm one of those folks that like, okay, they really haven't done much to impress me, especially since they had the hiccup against Oakland earlier this year. So I think the Bills will, I have the Bills pulling off the quote unquote upset. I'm doing air quotes here, upset, but it's going to be very close. But it's going to be very close. It might be one of those, 31-28 or 28-24 or 27-20 kind of games.
As usual, Lakeena steals my picks, but with that being said,
great minds, I guess.
With that being said, you guys know, listening to the show, I had Seattle and Buffalo in the Super Bowl before the season kicked off. Of course, Seattle's sitting at home like the rest of us watch these games, and Buffalo has the chance to go back to the Super Bowl for the first time since the '93 season. I'm going with Buffalo. I told Jason Leisure of the Chicago Sun-Times last week I did not move off my mountain. I have the Bills beating the Chiefs 33-30.
And Lamont actually is stepping out. He's facing. You know how he's been feeling about Kansas City. So look, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, like I said, this is the match that a lot of people want. Yeah. So yeah, he has KC winning. So it'll be interesting to see.
Okay.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what. Look, this is a matchup we've been wanting for the AFC. For a chance to represent them in the Super Bowl. So we'll see what happens. Both these games should be very entertaining.
It should be. Before we move on to some coaching news, Lakeena, I heard a couple of people, including our guy Jay Hood, hopefully we'll get him on this program sometime down the road, that we know that the networks alternate years on which title game will get the primetime spot. Do you agree that the AFC title game should be in primetime, or do you think that Brady and Rodgers should be the primetime game this year? Obviously, the NFL's not going to change it, but the NFC title game is first in the afternoon. Of course, the AFC title game is at night. Do you think it should be reversed just for this year, only because of the Brady and Rodgers matchup?
I think because CBS says they're hosting the Super Bowl this year. They got dibs as to which slot they want. I think that's how it works. So they decided to take the later game. So that's why we got the Brady and Rodgers. Look, would it be? Look, I'm sure Fox would have loved to have been the prime time slots. So I'm sure
because they had the prime time spot last year with the NFC title game, even though San Francisco was on the West Coast, but still they had the prime time spot last year with the NFC title game capping it off.
Yeah, it wasn't even 4:00 yet when that game kicked off in San Francisco. It was basically an afternoon game for them. But yeah, look, I think like I said, I think the way it works, I think the network, whoever never has a Super Bowl, they pick whoever. I think NBC. I think they just let I don't know how they do when NBC has a Super Bowl. I think they're gonna have it next year. I mean, but look, I'm sure Fox would love to have had Brady and Rodgers in that prime time slot, but look, it's gonna get big ratings regardless. It's Sunday afternoon. A lot of people are still off. A lot of people are still at home because of the pandemic, so it's gonna get big ratings regardless. So it's fine. Both these games are gonna have huge ratings. So if you're like, as long as you're getting big ratings and you're making money in the NFL, I don't think they care.
All right, let's move on to.
What about you?
I really don't care at this point. Of course, it would have made sense for Brady and Rodgers to be on in prime time, but like you said, just the way that it works out, we didn't get that. So I'm not really upset in any way. I just thought it was an interesting point that a few people brought up this week. But like you said, these networks alternate years, with the exception of NBC, because they don't get the title games anymore because they get Sunday Night Football. Right. But it's alternate years. It just so happens that it was CBS's turn this year to get the AFC title game in prime time. Let's move on quickly to some coaching news, Lakeena, before we close out this first segment. Dan Campbell, former player, I think you brought it up, Lakeena, that he took the job in Detroit, former tight end. He kind of made a fool of himself the other day during his presser, talking about biting off kneecaps, and I can understand talking tough and you want to make your team tougher. Matt Patricia did the same thing, and them trying to bully some reporters, sit up straight and all that nonsense. You saw what they got him. Dan Campbell, just basically a clown show. I know the goal is to win the press conference and to win the public over on your side, but Anything but that happened the other day.
Mhm.
I have a loss for words.
Yeah, you're verklempt if you guys are watching on the on YouTube. You're gonna be watching this. He's very verklempt, which is very rare. All these years I've known him, but yeah, I mean that whole presser like made me cringe. Like that's like right up there with what Patricia did. Also, when of course we know when Mark Trestman first got the Bears job, he said misspoke and said we're gonna be selfish and undisciplined, and I think that we all know what happened after that. But I mean, look, they're committed 6 years to him. That's a long time, and that's a big commitment. So yeah,
I think it's safe to say he won't last the whole time. I don't know if he's going to last even 3, but that's a whole other issue.
That's a whole nother thing. And look, Stafford might be gone, so they're probably gonna have to start from scratch. And look, I feel bad for Detroit, and this is probably the one time where I think you should be happy if you're a Bears fan, because it could be worse. You could be a Lions fan, and all the futility they've went through. So, I good luck to him, and you know what? Okay, fine. Yeah, that's the direction I wanted to go. But okay, I'm just gonna leave it there.
Before we move on, Lakeena, if you're Chris Spielman, I know you're quote unquote happy right now, but probably about this time next year, I'm sure he's going to regret on leaving Fox for this mess.
Yeah.
If it gets ugly.
Oh.
If you're Chris Spielman, like, really, you left Fox for this mess?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Can I go back? Can I go back?
Yeah, I'm sure he's probably going to be on his knees begging the Foxes for, can I come back? Can I come back now? I promise I won't. Yeah, look, I don't know how much of influence that he had in picking, Campbell here, but Coach Campbell here. But yeah, I mean, look, this is like someone should tell this isn't the 1970s anymore. You can't be doing that kind of stuff anymore. But hey, what it is, what it is.
Yeah, I was thinking about Mike Tyson, of course, after he bit off Evander Holyfield's ear. I want to say it was 97, somewhere around in there. Of course, he had that famous rant interview with Jim Gray afterwards. I'll eat his children, I'll do this and that. That's what I thought about. And then, of course, Barry Switzer, he took the Cowboys job and during that 93 offseason, of course, when Jimmy Johnson left out the back door. And, of course, Barry Switzer did his fake imitation of Mike Dicker. Let's go, baby, and all that crap. I was like, okay, I don't need all that. Just calm down and go win the Super Bowl, which he did during that 95 season. But
yep.
Those are the two personalities I thought about. I was listening and watching that Dan Campbell press conference. My goodness. It's like, okay, I know you're trying to set a tone and all that, but we don't need the clown show. Not yet.
No,
when you win, great. But you haven't proven yourself yet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Some of the other the only coaching vacancy that is still yet to be filled is the Houston coaching vacancy. Of course, Eric Bieniemy is up for it. Of course, with the timing and everything, they probably have to wait maybe another few weeks. But of course, the rumors of Deshaun Watson not being happy about the process, and perhaps maybe he may request a trade. We've talked about for the last couple of episodes. Sid, where do you think they stand? Because I'm hearing some people say, well, hey, maybe he come to the Bears. Okay, you guys do realize he has a no trade clause, right? And I don't think he's gonna want to come to a team where they really didn't want him. So, but again, I might be over stepping here. But what do you think?
Unless it's signed, sealed, delivered, and not an April Fool's joke, just like the Jay Cutler trade back in 2009, I don't believe it. Remember, folks, we were talking about the McCaskies. They're great decision makers when it comes to business, not when it comes to football, okay? Mm-hmm. Number two, the Bears do not have enough draft capital to trade for Watson. And I know some people say Khalil Mack, his big contract, and this and that and the third. I get it, but if you're the Texans, do you really want that contract? No.
Well, look, we talked about it. I mean, look at some of the teams. Of course, Miami. The fans are very vocal about it. Some people said maybe Detroit. I've heard supposedly there might be some infighting, if you will, between Jared Goff and Sean McVay. Some people said maybe Los Angeles the Rams might be a good destination. I've heard some people even say the Colts, but Look, I know the Texans have made some questionable decisions, but they're not going to send Deshaun Watson, their best player, in their own division. That's not happening.
No way. That's not. I don't see that happening either.
That's not happening unless the Colts gave him a really nice, deal for them, and because that Colts team is ready to win.
There's gonna be a Herschel Walker type deal like that happened back in the day with Jimmy Johnson and with Dallas and Minnesota back in '89. You don't see those type of deals anymore.
Oh no, and also too with the Colts need a quarterback now. Let's talk a little bit about Phillip Rivers. Of course, he made what some people thought was a somewhat surprising move earlier this week. And on Tuesday, he made his decision to retire. He wrote a really nice letter to the people of both the Chargers organization and as well as the Colts organizations. Has one of the top passers ever in the NFL. And also, too, I mean, I know people want to say, well, he never went to the AFC Championship game. He never went to a Super Bowl. But look, if you look up Rivers' numbers, those speak for themselves. So I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but you know how some of these people are. So I'll give the floor to you. So what do you think? Do you think he's a Hall of Famer?
For the numbers, yes. Unfortunately, because he doesn't have the Super Bowl titles, he'll probably have to wait in line. How long? I don't know, but. Due to his career numbers, obviously, yes, he is a Hall of Famer. I know he won Comeback Player of the Year in 2013, and he did play in one AFC title game, but that was without an ACL back in '07 when the Patriots were going with the season undefeated. So they lost the Super Bowl to the New York Giants. So Phillip Rivers has had a great career. During his early years in San Diego, I know Marty Schottenheimer was his coach. They had a couple opportunities to go to the Super Bowl. They just couldn't get it done. It wasn't his fault, but it was due to that coaching, which is a whole nother issue. Then he went through I forgot. I want to say it was North Turner, if memory serves correct. He was the head coach after that. And then he went through a transition for a while. Then he had new receivers. Keenan Allen, who's still on the team, came in a few years later. Then Rivers had that turnaround. I know myself, along with Kenneth Davis from Now That Davis show, but when we were doing the D and Davis show, he talked about all the time. Phillip Rivers at that time was back when he won the Comeback Player of the Year award. I'd say, yeah, they just had to get a defense together. Of course, that defense came together with Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram, my guy, and a couple of those guys, Derwin James, back in 2018 when they made it to the playoffs. They should have beaten the Patriots, but they just ran out of gas. You thought that squad would be back, but they just haven't had a chance to catch a break. Of course, Rivers was released after last season. But Phillip Rivers has been on some competitive teams that just couldn't get over the hump. One due to Tom Brady. What was the one team that stopped him? 2018, 2007, Tom Brady. But it doesn't mean, just because he doesn't have a Super Bowl doesn't mean he's not a great player. And like you say, he has the numbers to back it up.
Yeah, look, to me, he's right there with like the Warren Moons and the Dan Foutses. They were close a couple of times to go to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, they never went to one. But they've got the number. They had the numbers backing up, and they got into the Hall of Fame. Anyways. So I think he's first ballot. But like you said, so he probably is going to wait maybe 2 or 3 more years. But, we'll see what he does. He's already said that he wants to coach his oldest son's, I think, high school football team, if I'm not mistaken. I think he also has, I think it's like some of the networks are interested in him too. So, we'll see what he does post-football. But I think he should get into the Hall of Fame, and I think he is a Hall of Famer. So the numbers back it up. And it'll be interesting to see what the Colts do because – like you said, that team's equipped to win now. They've got the O-line, they've got the receivers. Once Mac comes back from his injury, he'll be back. Also, they got a top 10 defense, so they just need a quarterback now because Jacoby Brissett's a free agent. So it'll be interesting to see what the Colts decide to do.
Head coach Frank Reich and general manager Chris Bella, who used to be with the Bears organization from way back when. They have a lot of work to do. As soon as hopefully they can pick the right quarterback for that system. Like you said, that team is ready to win now.
Right. So, and for all of you guys who want Deshaun Watson, all your Bears fans, kids, it's not happening, folks. Let's let's get rid of that dream now because it ain't happening, kids. I'm sorry. I know because I've been hearing, sports radio at both the stations, and I'm hearing like people having this dream about Deshaun Watson, passing to Allen Robinson. Okay, first of all, Allen Robinson may not even be back next year. Let's remember that. Let's say put the franchise tag on.
But let's say slap the franchise tag, which is very possible.
Which they could, but I don't think you'd be happy about that if you're Allen Robinson. You hope they don't.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, look, some of the places that maybe the Jets, like you said, maybe the Dolphins, I'm sure he's going to want to go someplace where he can win now, and we'll see.
Yeah, it should be a very interesting offseason. The NFL never disappoints when it comes to that.
All right. We got a couple more black GMs though. I mean, unfortunately, we haven't had any black head coaches yet. We'll see what happens with Bieniemy and does he get the job over in Houston. But Martin Mayhew is now the new GM for the Washington football team. So we've gained like 2 or 3 black GMs. So that's progress, which is great. But even still, I heard, with the Rooney Rule with the coaching, they're still, the NFL still has a lot left to do. I mean, I think Washington also just hired an African-American female coach who's going to be a full-time coach for the first time ever in that sense, in that, respect. So we're slowly getting there. I mean, look, we still got a ways to go, but we're getting there, which is a good thing always.
Yes.
All right, so that wraps up our first segment here on Second City Sports. For our second segment, we remember one of the all-time sporting greats. We talk about the Bulls. The Bulls will be back in action. Also, the NBA, too, a big Lakers win after a disappointing loss, but they bounced back with a big win last night. Also, too, some college hoops. Some games have been postponed again due to COVID, and then with some rumors that perhaps they may have to pause for a few weeks next month. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more. We'll be right back with Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style. Welcome back to the weekend edition of Second City Sports Zoom style.
Zoom style.
Along with Lakeena McGee, I am Sidney Brown. You can follow yours truly on the Twitter and the Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. That's SIDKID80.
You follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter and Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow this podcast, Second City Sports, along with our other podcast programming from War Media by simply going to our website at www.weareregalradio.com. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com. And you can look us up on War on Anchor, wherever you download your podcast, whether it's Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and the iHeartRadio app. Make sure you type in that search engine box, War on Anchor, WARR on Anchor. We're also on YouTube at War Media. Once again, at War Media. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Sorry, Lakeena, is still there from you. But you can not only listen to us, we can watch us do our thing. As we both kiss it to the crowd.
Look alive, folks. Look alive.
Yes. So I'll hand it off to you, Lakeena, what you wanted to talk about kicking off the second segment.
Well, about a couple of hours ago, just a little under a couple of hours ago, we got some sad news from the world of sports. Henry Louis Aaron, a.k.a. Hammerin' Hank, passed away in his sleep earlier this morning in Atlanta. He was one of the all-time greatest players, number 2 in the all-time home runs, hits, and also the top in RBIs. Everything he went through, if you see his backstory, if you saw his sports century, when ESPN was doing those sports centuries, the turn of a century into the 2000s, a few years back, he and his wife shared some of the letters that he got when he was playing. He played in Atlanta. It was Milwaukee Braves for a little bit, but when he started playing in the D South, back in the mid to late 50s, I would say. He shares some of the letters that he wrote, and then I'm sure all black players especially that were playing in the South, because that was just integration in baseball was just sort of kind of kicking into high gear, and he shared some of those letters because he and his wife had saved those letters, and just so the awful things that he went through, illustrations of him being lynched. because that's how it was. Remember, this was in the early 70s, folks. Let's remember that. Just as
Jim Crow South.
Yeah, pretty much, and it's still going on in some aspects, but we won't go there. But 755 home runs, tops in RBI, all-time RBIs, 1957 NL MVP. He was a World Series champion, 25-time All-Star, 3-time Gold Glover, 2-time batting champ, All-Century team in 1982 Hall of Fame selection, first ballot. Whew, just so many, and also not just he was such a pioneer, not just in the game but also in American history. He was also a civil rights activist. Of course, growing up in the South, he had to deal with so much, and just to see him be as gentle as he was, the fact that he was such had charisma, and hearing stories from some of the former players and managers that he played with, and even some managers that he didn't play with, the younger players. I mean, just he was such an awe, just an American figure, and he will be missed. He was 86 years old, and he just epitomized of strength and class and dignity, and I think something that a lot of today's athletes can embody now.
Yes, he's definitely an icon for sure, a role model for everybody can look up to, of all cultures, creeds, and what have you. As I was watching some of the tributes this morning, since we are recording this show on a Friday, when I heard the news, the first thing that came to my mind, I said, I saw him on TV just a couple of weeks ago getting his vaccine shot for the COVID-19. Once again, as Tim Kirchin of ESPN put it best earlier this morning, he was trying to lead the charge for people to get their vaccines, who was eligible to get their vaccines shots for the COVID-19, once again, doing work in the community. But I did watch those programs growing up, looking, like you said, including the Sports Century episode that ESPN aired 20-plus years ago about Hank Aaron, one of the top athletes in our in sports history, not just baseball history, but sports history as well. And I compare his courage and his mannerisms overall to Jackie Robinson growing up in that time. And for those of you listening exclusively on the podcast and watching on YouTube at War Media, I have my Jackie Robinson jersey hanging up behind me. And Jackie Robinson paved the way for those players like Henry Aaron, Bob Gibson, and others. And Hank Aaron paved the way for the other players, especially Black American players, to follow after him. I compared his mannerisms to Jackie Robinson. Yes, you knew that we all knew that he was upset of getting those letters and getting the hate speech and hate mail from various fans as he was approaching Babe Ruth's record. And watching that clip over and over again when he hit number 715, and there was a white guy. I believe he's still alive today.
No, there were two of them. There was two of them. One of them is still alive.
Right, because the first one that ran out that hugged him, people at that time were afraid that he was going to get shot or stabbed or get tackled. Thank goodness none of those things happened. But you knew that he wanted to snap many times, including Jackie Robinson as well. But that keep that inside and represent not only themselves but their families in the game of baseball and their teams that they played to a high standard. And so you do commend him for his courage. You do commend him for his work off the field. I know you ran down his accomplishments on the field, which that cannot be overlooked, but what he did off the field was just more impactful than what he did on the field.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, he helped integrate even more. There was a time when about a third of the players playing in MLB baseball. By the time he retired, I'll talk about what in '74, ironically, when after he got the home run record at that time, a couple of months later he retired from the sport, and there were about a third of Black players in the major leagues during that time. I might the number I might give or take maybe a few percentage points. I'm not that good with estimation, so I was never good at that in math. But
it's worse now than it was back then.
Yeah, exactly. And now it's only 10%, if that, maybe lower than that, maybe 8%. I know he was in recent years. He was very vocal about the lack of Black, especially particularly African American participation in baseball. You saw with Curtis Granders and Doug Glanville wrote a really nice article about the lack of Black managers in baseball too. And I'm sure he's going to probably write something about Henry Aaron too. I'm sure it's probably something to look out for the next week or two. But you look at what he endured, growing up in Alabama, being right there in the South, seeing all those horrible things that happened down there and probably witnessed some of those things that happened. And just the fact that he was able to kind of overcome that. He found baseball as sort of, a refuge and, sort of, a salvage in his, in his career and his childhood through to his adulthood. And you see all those great Black players that never got their due. Satchel Paige, the guys in Negro leagues, the MLB, commending them for finally recognizing them. But also too, also Willie Mays, he went through a very similar path. I'm sure you ask him now, he's still with us, thank goodness. You ask him now, I'm sure he'll probably tell you some of the same things. Even though he was fortunate to play out west, but I'm sure he too, especially when he had to go to the South on the road games, I'm sure he had to go through some of the same issues that probably not even be able not be able to stay in the same hotel as his teammates, his white teammates. I mean, just the sort of like the horrible things that they had to endure, and just the class and the grace, like I said earlier, what he was able to epitomize. And he should be remembered to be committed. And I'm sure MLB will do some stuff to honor Mr. Aaron, for all his accomplishments both on and off the field. And also too, to probably perhaps maybe get more Black players into baseball. That's another discussion for another podcast episode. But what do you think?
Another moment that stood out to me, and I saw this on television earlier today. Of course, now retired baseball announcer Ben Scully, who of course did the games for the Dodgers for many years. He did some of the games for NBC back then, and he called the home run shot to break Henry Aaron to break Babe Ruth's record back on April 8th, 1974. And I'm trying not to misquote him here, but a Black man getting a standing ovation in the Deep South for breaking a treasured record. That was something big at the time, as we both mentioned, the racism he had to go through both on and off the field. In the description that I mentioned after he hit that historic home run, two people were congratulating him. Thank goodness that nothing happened to him at that time. But I think his words were poetic when they gave him the microphone after he crossed home plate. Thank God it's over. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
What else could you say at that moment?
Yeah, he really did. I think he even admitted himself that, look, I think he didn't really sort of savor it until later years, because I think when he first did it, I think he just felt that a huge weight was lifted off his shoulders. Now, look, I'm at the top now. People can just, it's over, it's done with, he can excel. He kind of excel now, and I think if you saw the interview, he sort of felt like he did kind of excel a little bit, especially after everything that happened, prior to that, leading up to it. So, I mean, look, this is someone who's going to be remembered, I think, for years to come. Like I said, I'm sure MLB will do some stuff to honor him, but I'm sure the Braves will probably have his, number, his jersey on their jerseys, and probably decals and stuff like that. Also Milwaukee too, because remember, the Braves were in Milwaukee for a little bit before they moved to Atlanta back in the early 70s. People forget about that. And, Craig Canton, who, grew up, in Milwaukee, who's a Milwaukee kid now, of course, is a manager for the Brewers, he actually shared a story that Henry Aaron actually, was asking him questions about growing up, and, because he saw a little bit of Hank before, the Braves franchise moved to Atlanta. He just couldn't believe it, because he was just so in awe, because just how much of a presence that Hank has. Even some, Aaron Boone actually shared a story where, of course, his father, his grandfather, they played, managing the managers and worked in the front offices. He was talking, he and Dave Fleming, I think also Timmy Kirch, because he shared this story too. They were all in the booth, and I think it was just a couple of years ago that it was an ESPN game, and he was, Hank Aaron was sharing stories. He was there for almost about an hour or an hour and a half sharing stories, and Aaron didn't know what to say, because he was just so in awe of Henry Aaron. That just shows how much of a presence that he had, and he will be missed, and definitely one of the sports and also great U.S. icons, not just sports icons, but also of all history, like you said.
And also, too, before we move on, another moment that popped out to me, and a couple of people brought this up. I was listening and watching television earlier today when Barry Bonds broke his record back in 2007 against the Washington Nationals with that big home run by Barry Bonds in San Francisco. How ironic. No one knew at the time. I didn't either, that it was a surprise video tribute, and it was, of course, Henry Hank Aaron on the other end, giving props to Barry Bonds for breaking his record. Of course, we all know at that time, we won't go really deep into this. We'll do it at another time. But, of course, the game of baseball didn't want Barry Bonds to break that record because of his alleged steroid use. And of course, many people in the media didn't like him, even though they voted him for MVP of many of those years of Bonds' career. They didn't like his personality. So we don't like him breaking that record and this and that and the third. But it was just all that was dead for me personally when that video tribute was on the big board in San Francisco. When Henry Aaron said, "You're the best, congratulations." You can go look that up on YouTube for yourselves. But that was another big moment that popped up to me about Henry Aaron. We heard that we lost him early on Friday.
And also, it's just a class too. I mean, he didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do that video tribute. I'm sure.
Exactly.
I'm sure
there's people that told him not to do it, but he went ahead and did it anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know that to be a fact, but I'm sure some people don't know why you're doing this, especially to a guy that quote unquote many people don't like.
Well, yeah. I'm sure if you look, I'm sure he probably had his druthers about it. But look, that just shows you how classy he was. And look, he said, look, he's the home run king. He's the best. Well, look, we won't talk about it because that's another thing. That's a whole nother episode, but a whole nother podcast. But like he just showed you the epitome of class, and I think he showed you why he's the epitome of class. It's just so too. Like at baseball as a whole, baseball fans have had a tough year. I mean, look, Don Sutton just passed away. I mean, who played for the Braves organization, who was a Braves commentator for many years, a Hall of Famer, 4-time All-Star. He passed away just a couple of days ago, like I think it's Wednesday or something. His son Darren, who is actually a TV personality now, who's very popular, shared the news. Just sad news there. Lou Brock, Tom Seaver, Bob Gibson, Al Cayley, Whitey Ford, Joe Morgan, and Justin Turner, who is the outfielder for the Dodgers, actually shared something pretty funny. He said all those guys I mentioned, you gotta look up the tweet yourselves, folks, but he said all those folks passed away, and Tyler Soares got a hell of a time managing that group up in heaven. I'm paraphrasing what Justin said, but he's right. He's right back in those, because all those guys had various great personalities and such. So yeah, I'm sure they're having a really nice baseball game up upstairs right now.
Yeah. Yeah, all those icons you mentioned there will be missed, including Hank Aaron, the original home run king. Excuse me for those watching. Yeah, the original home run king, Henry Hank Aaron, he will be missed. So he was a great man. He had left an impact, a legacy. It will not be forgotten. So we'll move on to some basketball. Lakeena, the Chicago Bulls in the NBA. Let's start off with our Chicago Bulls. They are sitting with a record of 6-8 as of this recording. They'll have games this weekend against the Charlotte Hornets, Michael Jordan's team, on the road, and then of course the Saturday game at the United Center against LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers. Of course, they'll play the Boston Celtics for the first time on Monday. That's also at the United Center. Lakeena, the Bulls only had one game this week. They defeated the Houston Rockets this past Monday, 125-120. Zach LaVine had 33 points. The Bulls didn't have the team defense again consistently, but you love how, Zach LaVine is still learning how to be a leader, but on and off the court, improving his game. And number two, looking at that stat sheet from the Bulls, you like to see some balanced scoring. You saw that on Monday night. You like to see everyone getting involved. We saw that in their last victory against Houston.
Well, I think a total team effort, right? That's if you're a Bulls fan, I think that's what you want. Look, they were scoring. All 5 stars were in double figures. Zach, LaVine had 33. Marketing had 18, and Denzel Valentine. There's a name I'm sure our friend Mac Peck. I'm sure he loves him. From both outsiders. And also the Lockdown Bulls pod, I'm sure. Look, he loves him. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding. I'm not trying to. But look, Thaddeus Young. We'll.
I'm sure you won't mind.
Yeah, no, he won't. No, he won't. Thaddeus Young, who might be a trade, a trade piece. When the trade deadline approaches, he had 12 points off the bench too. So look, having that balanced scoring. Sorry about that, folks. Balanced scoring and That's what you want if you're a Bulls fan. I think, look, the defense, we know that the defense is still going to need work. We know this. They're probably going to be giving up over 100 points. I think they're one of the few teams in the NBA that give up over 100 points in each of their games. But, I mean, look, if you score more points than the other team, I guess that's the game, right? So, as long as you get the wins, you'll be okay with it, especially if you beat a team like Houston that's going through a transition. We'll see how they do against Charlotte. It's been up and down. We'll see how they do against LeBron and the Lakers tomorrow. I'm going to assume that Anthony Davis will probably play because he didn't play the last game and they almost lost. We'll get to them in a minute because they had a big win last night. But look, I think this is great to see if you're a Bulls fan, right? You want to see who you can sort of build around. I think Billy Donovan and also Mark Eversley and Arturas Carter, I think they're trying to see, okay, who are the guys that they can use to build around. And I think, look, this is a great start. I didn't think they would. I think no one thought they would be this, pretty good. I mean, they're not great yet. Look, they'll be the first to tell you they're not right up there with Milwaukee and them yet, and Boston and them. But if they can play and give that fight, like we've been saying, I think teams are realizing that these Bulls teams actually they're kind of their stock's going up.
Yeah, their stock is going up. Of course, the Bulls, just like every other team, has to deal with COVID issues and injuries. Of course, now Chandler Hutchison and Thomas Satoransky, they'll be back soon off the injury list for the Chicago Bulls. And dare I say this, for the first time in years, this is actually a good problem to have if you're the Chicago Bulls, who to play, who not to play, and who's going to step up. This is the first time in a long time we'd be able to say this sanely and looking at it through not rose-colored glasses, but looking through a logical sense. And this is what a competent head coach will do for you. Billy Donovan, he has a good problem that he has on his hands right now. Who to play, who not to play, who plays well with who, and also depends on the matchups as well. So this is a good problem to have. The majority of your roster healthy. Who's going to step up? And right now, going, as I mentioned, with Zach LaVine scoring 33 points in their victory on Monday against Houston. And that was encouraging to see. Of course, he struggled last weekend in their win against Dallas, only scoring 10. But sometimes that happens, but you got to keep at it. Lauri Markkanen, we talked about him on our last episode, Lakeena. He's been stepping it up ever since his last return. He's averaging a little bit, I believe, over 20 points a game since he's returned last weekend in his 3 games in action. So if you're a Bulls fan, you have to be encouraged. Now, I'll ask this question. I know I'll get in trouble for asking this, but we have to do it because of what we do. Is making the playoffs a realistic goal for this team right now? Do you think that's a realistic goal? Will it be? Should that be the benchmark right now?
I think that if it gets to that play-in game, that play-in series, I guess that's how they're doing it. With the playoffs or whatnot, I'll be fine. I mean, look, if they make the playoffs, I mean, look, that's going to be a big task because consider the teams that they have ahead of them, all the teams that they have them right now. It's gonna be tough, but look, I mean, it will be a bonus. I mean, I'm not gonna lose sleep if they don't make the playoffs. I'm not one of those fans like, oh, we got to make the playoffs. No, as long as they're kind of right there to contend, right? I mean, because you know how some Bulls fans are, how see Red Fred, see Red Fred won. Look, I mean, as long as they're competent and they're confident. That's what you want to see. And this is what I've never thought I've had to say that as a Bulls fan all these years and watching this team, all the horrible, dreading. Now I want to watch a Bulls game now. I'm not dreading it. Like, oh, good. I can't wait for the Bulls. Patrick Willis, it looks like he'll be able to play tonight. So that's good news for the team. And look, I mean, I think, confident and confidence. That's what you want from this team. And that's all I wanted. My benchmark was low, and I'm going to keep it there. Because I'm not gonna have realistic expectations. I'm not gonna have them battle for the 1 seed with the Sixers and the Celtics and the Bucks. I'm not gonna do that. So, as long as they're right there, as long as they're competitive, as long as teams are realizing that they can't rest on their laurels when they play the Bulls anymore, I'm okay with that for right now.
You're listening to Second City Sports Weekend Edition along with Lakeena McGee. I am Sydney Browns. We talk Chicago Bulls in the NBA. You kind of stole my next question, but I'll ask it. Has the Chicago Bulls, especially with their recent winning streak they're under right now, are they must-see TV? I'll give you an example. There are 2 games this weekend as of this recording, Friday's game against Charlotte on the road and then Saturday night's game against the Lakers. like we've been asking, Lakeena, these last couple of weeks, can the Bulls keep the fight? And I'm really looking forward to the Charlotte game on Friday because LaMelo Ball's been playing well. Gordon Hayward's been playing okay for Charlotte. Scary Terry Rozier, former Celtics player, now with Charlotte. Now you have Miles Bridges over there as well. They have some nice young pieces. They may be a factor in that playing tournament game too. I'm not predicting it for that squad either, but they're very interesting to watch so far early in the season.
And also too, they're trying to break a 3-game losing streak. So I think that's what I think they're looking for that too. So that should be a good one tonight. I think they're kind of similar. Of course, yeah, they got Gordon Hayward, so who's probably one of the top players, the top utility guys in the league. So they don't have that yet, the Bulls. But look, they're sort of very similar. They got a young, scrappy team. This should be really interesting, entertaining game. Tonight. This will definitely be in the hundreds, no doubt, because they've also given up 100 points, 100-plus points Charlotte has. So, their defense is a little lackluster, too. So it could be like first to 140. Who knows? But tonight it will be interesting nonetheless. But, look, I'm looking forward to this game. It should be a fun game. Look, this should be a very entertaining matchup here. And I'm looking forward to it. And this is probably one of those toss-up games, I think.
And also, to remember what Zach LaVine did to them last year. I don't want to say last December. I think he hit 13 points, 13 3-points, including the game winner last year. So if he has another performance like that against this team, woo-wee.
Going to be a long day down in Charlotte. Also, who will have to defend LaMelo. That's going to be another Herculean task there, too. So should be a good one.
That's going to be an interesting matchup, Kobe White against LaMelo.
Yeah, that should be an interesting one tonight. No doubt about it. So what has impressed you so far this week, Sid, in the NBA?
Let's go to those Brooklyn Nets. I was not surprised of what happened to them against Cleveland on Wednesday, losing in overtime. Colin Sexton went off for 42 points. Of course, that was the game that featured the Nets, all three of their big superstars on the same team on the same court. That, of course, Kyrie Irving returned to the lineup. They had a big win on Martin Luther King Day against Milwaukee. Of course, Giannis and KD got testy a little bit early, but you could tell that was a big game, a big measuring stick. That game was a big measuring stick for both teams. But the Brooklyn Nets, I think as we told you guys in our last episode, this is the time they need to they're going to figure out who plays with who's going to take a step back. Kyrie Irving had a big game, as I mentioned, the other night against Cleveland, but he had to take 28 shots. That's not his game. So out of those big three, who's going to take the step back? It looks like it has to be Kyrie.
Oh, looks like it, right? Someone's got to do it, right? You got to think that KD is going to be on the inside. Of course, Harden will try to do his best, from 3-pointers. He'll probably shoot some stuff from Staten Island, I guess. But taking a lot of shots is not Kyrie's thing. He wants to be the facilitator. That's not really his style. So it's going to be interesting to see, how I think they're still meshing how to play together. So I would say give him a couple more games, but. Look at the Colin Sexton. I think that was his career high, 42. So that was he was hot that night. You're gonna have one of those nights. So I'm not too worried about it. I would say give it a couple more weeks, and then if they lose more, then we can probably start wondering. Okay, Nets fans should start hyperventilating a little bit. But I think right now, look, they're still learning how to play together. So just give it time.
Yeah, and also, too, I believe we talked about this on our last episode. The problem for Brooklyn is who's going to defend, especially in the interior. You can't depend on Durant doing that. If you do, you're going to be in trouble. They got to find some way to play some type of team defense. I know Steve Nash is the head coach. I know his right-hand man, Mike D'Antoni, his assistant, former head coach. Defense is a curse word to him, but you got to do it at some point, folks. And especially if you expect it to come out of the East and make it to the NBA Finals, assuming that you play the Lakers or the Clippers, you got to have some kind of defensive game plan. Right now, it's just not there.
Well, yeah, Harden's going to have to play defense. He doesn't like playing defense either. So that's we'll have to wait and see with that. But someone's going to have to play defense, too, if y'all talk about y'all want to get to the finals and get out of the East. The Sixers have been kind of up and down too. They sort of meandering at 500. They had a nice win a couple of nights ago. What do you think about the Sixers? They have a big one tonight against Boston.
Yeah, first of all, can it have enough players to stay healthy? As of right now, the answer is yes. And can I catch COVID either, in which they've been dealing with? We'll get to the other teams that have been dealing with that issue in just a second. But I like what I'm seeing in Philadelphia right now. Hopefully, Ben Simmons can at least have a little bit of an offensive game. Can we get that from him? We shall see. Joel Embiid. Hopefully, he can be stay healthy. He has a nice inside game. He's been consistent with that so far. So I'm not going to put him up there as MVP caliber season type players yet. No, I want to see more from him. But right now, he's having a nice start to the season. We'll see what bigger impact can Doc Rivers have on this team? I think they can only get better. As long as they stay healthy, I think they'll be fine. Now, the game that you referenced to earlier, Lakeena, that was from Thursday night. The Lakers had a big win on the road at Milwaukee, 113-106. I know some people want to make this a finals preview. I'm not so sure about that, but it was a great contest to watch on Thursday. LeBron James led the Lakers in scoring with 34.6 rebounds, 8 assists. Giannis Antetokounmpo, a.k.a. the Greek Freak, led Milwaukee with 25 points, 12 rebounds, and 3 assists. As you mentioned, Lakeena, the key for the Lakers last year and for this year going forward is Anthony Davis. He had a big game with 18 points in 38 minutes on Thursday night. He made some key defensive rebounds down the stretch. He had a total of 9 for the game. And Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, as we talk about all the time, you had to have role players stepping up in key times, and he did that on Thursday. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, that is scoring a personal season high for him, 23 points off of 7-10 shooting, all that was from three-point land.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's been an issue for them, that three-pointer. And I think the Lakers probably were not very happy because they let that lead against Golden State. I think they were still upset about that against Golden State.
Yeah, from Monday, yeah.
Yeah, so I think they were maybe upset about that. And I think LeBron, wanted to take it out on the Bucks. And so, but, he did. Look, I think LeBron showed you that, look, he's 36, but he still can do it. So, he did his thing. He, made some big shots late in that game on Thursday. Look, I mean, well, I don't know if it'll be the finals preview, but I think Milwaukee, is showing you that they're still missing some pieces, even though they tried their best to kind of upgrade. But, I think, the Lakers could kind of expose that, look, they still got issues up there in Milwaukee. Look, LeBron did his thing, Caldwell Pope, made some big shots too. So Montrezl Harrell did his thing off the bench. So, like I said, I think that they weren't pleased that they. I think LeBron even mentioned that they were still mad about that game against the Warriors. So I think they took it out on the Bucks.
Yeah, speaking of another team that's not getting any respect and taking it out on the league, that's the Utah Jazz. They were the second game of that TNT doubleheader on Thursday. They defeated the New Orleans Pelicans 129-118. Donovan Mitchell, as this ESPN headline as I'm reading right now, Mitchell's moves puts Alexander Walker on skates. He crossed him up in plain English. Oh, it was a great play. Donovan Mitchell led Utah with 36.7 rebounds and 5 assists. Zion Williamson continues to impress his Pelicans franchise and his teammates. He scored 27 points, grabbed 3 rebounds, and dished out 2 assists. We all know New Orleans is trying to find themselves. Let's see if Zion can stay healthy for an entire year. Utah is on a roll right now. For me, I know it's still early as we completed just about now 1 month into the season. Like I said, it's early for Utah. Congrats to them. But you got to show me come playoff time.
Well, yeah, look, they've won 7.
I know it's early to put that out, but let's be real. And I don't hate Utah. I don't. But do they have the kind of roster that can sustain themselves come playoff time?
Yeah, I mean, look, they've won 7 in a row. Utah has, and I think Shaq even called them out, saying that, well, look, how are you guys gonna be able to do this in the playoffs? We saw what happened when you guys were in the bubble. You didn't do well there, and I think Don Mitchell was, he was very, not defensive, but he kind of said, look, we're just trying, to do our thing, and look, I think they can do that. They got the players to do it in Utah, but. Look, I mean, Donovan Mitchell can't do it all, all by himself. And thankfully he hasn't had to do that. But I think if you want to get up to that level with the Lakers and the Clippers, you probably are going to have more than one guy step up. And look, we'll look. I mean, we saw it last night. I mean, Donovan had 36 points. Mike Conley Jr. had 20, and Gobert, had a double. I mean, look, Bogdanovich had 16. So those guys need to step up and help him out. And also, I think Jordan Clarkson had 19 off the bench. So you need to. I think, look, you have to do that in the playoffs, like you said, Sid. I mean, you could have done it last year in the bubble. You didn't. You got knocked out early. So, look, I think I can understand why, Shaq and a few other national pundits don't want to take you guys seriously right now.
Yeah, but that's the question that we'll have for Utah. Now, Lakeena, looking at the schedule for this weekend's games, and particularly on Saturday and Sunday for the National Basketball Association. For Saturday, I'm looking forward to these two games. The Miami Heat traveling to Brooklyn to face the Nets. Of course, the Nets' big three is the key storyline in the NBA. Who will Jimmy Butler guard? Durant, Harden, or will he guard Kyrie? I don't think he'll guard Kyrie. Good grief. Guard Kyrie, but I think it's going to be between Durant and Harden that Jimmy Butler will have to guard. And also, too, speaking of the Utah Jazz, they'll face the Golden State Warriors on Saturday night. Of course, the Warriors had a big-time loss to the New York Knicks, of all teams, on Thursday. I know Steve Kerr, after the game, said that the Warriors are not a good team right now, which he's correct, but they're a mediocre team at best. But we expected that coming into the season, of course, with the loss of Klay Thompson for the season with their torn Achilles. It's going to be a fight for the Warriors to be respected.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, they've been rising through the standings. That's going to be interesting, right? I mean, look, remember, they still, unfortunately, they're not going to have Klay. Draymond's back, but you don't know how much of a factor he's going to be. Wiseman's shown that he's pretty good, but again, we'll see if the Warriors can, and we'll be able to make trades in the trade deadline to try to maybe get into that top of the threshold with the Lakers and the Jazz and the Lakers. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to see it. That should be a very interesting game there. Another game I'm looking forward to tomorrow night, Sid, for Saturday night, I should say, I have Denver and Phoenix.
Yeah.
Denver has been struggling lately. They're at 500 right now. They need to get it together, because if they want to kind of be taken seriously in the West like Utah, they're going to have to kind of get it together. And look, Phoenix, they've been kind of up and down lately. They did have a nice win a couple of days ago, but look, Devin Booker, CP3, and those guys, they're all, been meshing well together, and that should be a fun one on tomorrow night.
Yep. And also a couple of games on tap for Sunday to pay attention to. Of course, the Oklahoma City Thunder and the LA Clippers. Of course, the Thunder climbing back to – they're not at 500 yet. They are at 6 and 7 as of this recording. They'll take on the Los Angeles Clippers on the road. The Clippers are 11 and 4. And then looking at the nightcap, the New York Knicks, as of right now, they're at 500 with an 8-8 record. They're still on their West Coast road trip. They'll take on the Portland Trail Blazers, who are 8-6 as of this moment. Damian Lillard, he'll have to carry this team again, Lakeena. I don't know if you saw that injury to C.J. McCollum from the other night.
Yeah.
That is a huge loss. And, of course, one of their big guys will be out 6 weeks as well. So we all thought that Portland will finally turn the corner this year. They have another setback with a couple more players dealing with injuries.
Yeah, that's good. That's a tough one. I think, like you said, I think Jokic is also out too for Portland, so that's good.
Yeah, he's the one out for 6 weeks.
Yeah, so that's going to be another issue for Portland. Portland was sort of hanging by a thread. They're in the 5th seed, but they got to be without their 2 top guys. And look, I mean, Dame can only do so much. Also, Carmelo too. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Portland does.
And also, too, Lakeena, as before we close out the NBA portion. The Memphis Grizzlies, they're going to be off a few days until they deal with their COVID issues. I know the Bulls are supposed to play them on the road next Wednesday. But as we talked about in our last episode, Lakeena, I don't think the league is going to shut down. They'll have to power their way through this thing. But you don't want this to get out of hand. But at the same time, the NBA knew that they were going to have to deal with issues like this because they're not in the bubble. Everybody's not staying in one place. So this is just another example of how it's a challenging time to get through this thing.
And also Washington too. They were supposed to
Yeah,
play
they haven't played
Milwaukee.
in almost a week and a half.
Yeah,
I think. I
yeah.
don't want to exaggerate, but they haven't played in almost a week and a half.
A little over a week. They were supposed to play Milwaukee tonight, but that's been postponed, of course, due to COVID. So, unfortunately, like you said, I think the NBA, I think they realized that, look, there's going to be some problems with some teams, but look at the NFL. I mean, look, they had their issues, but they've been powering through, and we're only a few weeks left before we crown a new Super Bowl champion. So, I'm sure NBA is hoping that they do the same thing.
Yeah, and those games that were postponed, that will be made up during the second half of the season after their All-Star break following the first week in March. Let's move on, Lakeena, quickly to your games for the weekend for people to pay attention to as far as college basketball is concerned. I know that the Final Illini got back on track the other night with a big conference win on the road.
Yes, they did. Again, a much-needed win there, but unfortunately, their Michigan State game that's supposed to have been tomorrow. That's actually supposed to have been a Fox game, but that's been postponed because of COVID issues with the Spartans program. Texas and TCU, there were some issues with the TCU program and COVID, so that game's been postponed for tomorrow. Although, some good ones here. You got KU and Oklahoma. KU hoping to bounce back from their loss to Baylor earlier this week. UConn and Creighton, a Big East matchup. Remember now that, UConn's back in the Big East. Baylor and OK State, Kate Cunningham, the sensation, for OK State. That should be a fun one there, hoping to kind of knock Baylor out from the ranks of the unbeaten. Providence and Villanova. Villanova had a nice win after not playing for like almost 2 weeks because of the COVID issues. So they got a big one against Providence. Clemson and Florida State should be a good one. Also, Ohio State and Wisconsin. That should be a fun one. In the Pac-12 out west, you got UCLA and Stanford. Also, Mississippi State and Alabama. Georgia Tech and Virginia. That should be a fun one there. Missouri and Tennessee, like a battle of two ranked teams in the SEC. So a lot of good matchups in college hoops this weekend. I'll get to Sunday games in a minute, but also too, we want to send our best wishes to Nebraska coach Fred Hoiberg. They've had to shut down their program for a little bit because of COVID issues with him, and I think some of his players, and I think some of his personnel people too.
He's been dealing with some health challenges the last couple of years as well. Hopefully everything turns out the best for him. We're thinking about him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, get well soon. Absolutely. So yeah, COVID's wreaking havoc. And there's actually a rumor, real quick, before we move on, that they may pause, the whole season for maybe 2 weeks, because there have been a couple of women's teams have had to shut down indefinitely. DePaul still having issues, so it's sort of definitely it's kind of wreaking havoc here. And I don't know, Sid. I mean, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here, because like we've been saying, some programs on both the men's and the women's side have had decided to shut down for the rest of the season.
Yeah, if you're the NCAA, you really don't want to do that, but if it really gets out of hand, you may be forced to do that. I know they announced that at least for the men's March Madness, the basketball tournament will be held in the state of Indiana at a few sites within the Indianapolis city region, the home of the Final Four. But like you said, Lakeena, the health is what's most important. Of course, we all know that these teams are playing these games is because the big money pot at the end. Of course, we all, as I always say, everybody in college sports gets paid except for the players. That's a whole nother issue, but that's reality right now. So hopefully it doesn't get too out of hand, but if it does, they may have no choice but to do that. Hopefully it doesn't get to that point.
Yeah, let's hope not. I mean, a couple other games for Sunday, Loyola and Bradley. That should be a good one there. Battle of the area teams. Rutgers, Indiana. Indiana had with a nice win last night against Iowa. Big upset there and over at Carver Hawkeye Arena. Looks like they're playing pretty well over there, down there in Bloomington. But yeah, so definitely some interesting developments here. We'll see what happens, because there have been a lot of postponements, and some cancellations too.
Yep, there is.
All
there
right.
has been. Hopefully they can power this thing through.
Fingers crossed. Okay, Sid, what do you got for me?
All right, I was listening to a national show the other day. Of course, now that those of you listening around the world, of course, here in the United States, we have a new president, uh, president number 46, and Joseph Biden. Of course, the vice president is Kamala Harris. I'm assuming I pronounced that name correctly. Of course, we all know that we do not discuss politics on this show. We are a sports show. We're going to keep it that way. But this national show I was listening to the other day brought up an interesting topic called sports pardons. And they were giving up, of course, I don't know, it's been a tradition of the previous presidents doing this, but of course, 45, we all know who that is. We won't say the person's name. But 45 gave out pardons to a whole bunch of people, including Lil Wayne, the rapper, and I believe Brian Urlacher's brother, Casey Urlacher, for some stuff. You could look it up yourself. But he gave out pardons on his last day on the job. And this host had his segment called Sports Pardons, giving out pardons and basically forgiving the horrible acts in the sports world. Like, for example, Chris Webber's timeout during the 93 NCAA basketball championship game between Michigan and North Carolina, if you guys remember that. Of course, we had some other national tragedies in the sports world on the field, of course, that I'm not remembering right now. But I want to bring it home locally, Lakeena. Do you have any Chicago sports pardons? Any athlete? It could be current or former or ex-athlete that you like to give a pardon to say, you're forgiven. I'm not going to waste my energy on you anymore. I've forgiven you. I'm not going to throw my unnecessary anger at you anymore. I have two, but I'll let you go first.
I have a couple, I guess, maybe Moises Alou, I think at the top of my head. I mean, the way he reacted after that whole thing with Steve Bartman. I mean, look, I already pardoned him, years ago.
So you're already ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I was, thank goodness. But yeah, I mean, look, the way he reacted, look, I forgive you. I think, look, who knows? We don't know how any of us would have reacted in that particular situation. But I'll give him a pardon there. You go ahead, because I got to think of another one, because I have a couple myself. I'm trying to think of another one.
Okay. My first one is, of course, it was kind of along your program, Lakeena, but after the 2005 World Series, which my White Sox swept the Houston Astros, all was quote-unquote forgiven in my world, because up until that point, the best White Sox team I've ever seen was the 93 team. Of course, they lost to Toronto in 6 games. Of course, Toronto won the World Series, beating Philadelphia that year in 93. But the one person that I was so angry at in 93 was the AL Cy Young Award winner for that year, Mr. Black Jack McDowell. That's right, kid. He lost not one but 2 of those games during that series, and I was so upset. I'll be honest with you, Lakeena. I was so mad at him, and rightfully so, at that time, that he didn't perform up to his capabilities in that series. Of course, the White Sox lost all 3 of their home games during that series. They won 2 of the 3 games in Toronto. And, of course, you remember, too, at that time, Jordan announced his retirement during Game 2 of that. I think it was I believe it was Game 1 of that series, because that Game 1 was at night. And so folks can go look that story up right there. So I'll give a pardon to Jack McDowell. Of course, he's one of the best pitchers in Sox history. He kept it up for another couple of years. I'll give a pardon to him. This next one, I will never say this coming out of my mouth. But watching Last Dance, and of course I know he's passed away, the late great and Basketball Hall of Famer Jerry Krause.
Okay, that's it.
So as a fan, I didn't like what went on at that time during the '98 season. Of course, he was an easy target. Like I said, those of you who haven't watched Last Dance, go look at it. To get further history lesson on that. So my 2 pardons are Jerry Krause and Jack McDowell, as far as Chicago sports are concerned.
Oh gosh, I thought I had another one there, but I don't think I do. But look, Jack McDowell, I think he was definitely up there with me, because I really think that the White Sox could have won the World Series either '93 or the very next year. Of course, the baseball season was shortened, so there was no World Series. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting though. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you're like sports as a whole, I think who would you give a pardon to? Do you give a pardon to perhaps maybe Scott Norwood? I think that's probably someone I probably would give one to.
That's a good one. That is a good one.
Because I think, look, he got mercilessly hammered and probably still does. If you saw the 30 for 30 with those, that told you the story about those early 90s Buffalo Bills teams, pardon me.
The 4-4 for Buffalo. Go look it up on YouTube, folks.
Yeah, it's a great doc, as most of the 30 for 30s usually are. He got hammered, and I can't imagine what that would have been like if he was on social media and that happened during this era of social media. I can't imagine what he would have went through. So I'll do it for Buffalo, especially if Buffalo ends up winning, this year.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That they all will be forgiven.
You know that's going to get brought up, especially if they win it this year. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think the city of Buffalo loved Norwood, but like so across the country, people are still throwing shots at Norwood.
Yeah.
That is a good one. I'll give my national sports partner to Scott Norwood. Like so I wasn't really mad at.
No, I wasn't either. That was the thing. I wasn't,
but so long. Buffalo falling short, and this how we got started, blah blah blah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Look, I
that
wasn't
is a good one. Good call.
And also, like you said, Buffalo. Look, the Buffalo are some of the classiest fans in the country. So they forgave him, but everyone else, were just hammering him all over the place. And I can't imagine if this had happened now, what that would have been like for him, especially if he was on social media. Ugh.
Yeah. Real quick before we continue, Lakeena, as a Chicago sports fan, and I was thinking about this too last night, I repeat, will not give a sports pardon to Hugh Hollins. 1994 Game 5 Bulls Knicks. Scottie Pippen did not foul Hubert Davis. Hubert Davis said it himself to Tom Dore at the time on Sports Channel Chicago. Scottie Pippen did not foul me. Hugh Hollins, you will not get pardoned. Go to hell, jump in the lake, and die.
Oh, okay.
Being humorous, of course.
Oh, of course. On that note, what are you looking forward to this weekend?
Oh, that's the end?
Look, if you want something else. I mean, look, what else do you have?
No. I know we got to get up out of here, but looking forward to it this weekend. Of course, Championship Sunday in the NFL. Let's see if the Brady-Rodgers matchup will be a classic one for the ages, or will the Packers dominate? On the other side, can the Bills pull off an upset at Kansas City? It's a realistic possibility. How will Patrick Mahomes perform, though? Those are the interesting storylines I'm looking forward to. Of course, the games highlighted in the NBA, as we mentioned, including the Bulls. So there's going to be a lot of games watching for yours truly this weekend via my TV and my computer.
Absolutely. Yeah. Same thing for me. Look, Championship Sunday is one of the best days in sports. We're gonna both these games should definitely be classics. Both going down to the wire. I really believe that's what's going to happen. What else? Of course, the college hoops matchups, also the NBA matchups I just mentioned, and the Blackhawks. I'm mentally prepared, Sid, for them to be the worst team in the league. I'm mentally prepared and ready for that because that game against that last game they had.
I know they had their home opening series this weekend against the Detroit Dead Wings. I believe Sunday's game is on NBC for the whole national audience to see. If you do not come out at least with a split, something's wrong with you. I'll leave it at that.
Well, also too, NBC Universal, they're shutting down at Sports Network, NBCSN. John Oran, he does a great job. Been covering sports media for years. He just announced that they're ceasing their operation at the end of the year. So a lot, especially I guess a lot of their stuff, the NHL, the Premier League, I guess is going to be going over to the NBC Universal Sister Network, USA Network. So it's going to be spread out to all different networks. I feel for the people there because. Yeah, this is how a lot of those sports, especially the EPL, me being a big soccer fan, international soccer fan, that's how it became popular, was because those games were on NBC Sports Network. Now you're ceasing their operations, and what's going to happen? Are you going to put it all on your Peacock app? I mean, what's going on? Also, especially for the NHL, and of course, the NHL, the TV rights are up, I believe, this year, right, Sid? Or maybe next year, I'm thinking. I
think next year. We'll do some research on that, but it's coming up on it pretty soon. We'll probably get into this more next week, but will this open the door for ESPN?
Oh yeah, because they got ESPN Plus now. They can put some of the games on there if they want.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We'll see. Gonna be very interesting. We'll keep you updated on that. So on that note, you can follow me at Keena McGee on Twitter and at Keena_McGee on the IG.
You can follow yours truly, Sid the Kid, on Twitter and the Instagram at SidKid80. Once again, at SidKid80. That's SIDKID80. SIDKID80. You can go to our website, weareregalradio.com. That's WEAREREGAL radio.com for all of our articles, podcasts, and other special features on that beautiful website as well. You can follow our podcast, Second City Sports, along with our other podcast programming from War Media by simply typing in that search engine box War on Anchor, wherever you download your podcast, iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, and that iHeartRadio. Type in that search engine box WARR on Anchor. And you can follow us on YouTube at War Media, once again at WARR Media. You can not only listen to us, but watch us live.
All right.
As you throw kisses to the crowd.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, share, subscribe, and tell your friends. So keep your mask up, wash your hands, and be careful out there. Some of the stuff has been going on, but it's a new day here in the States, so hopefully better things are yet to come here. So for Sid, I'm Lakeena. You guys stay safe. And also, too, it's going to be snowing. We're going to have a mini snowstorm this weekend, so get what you need. Be safe out there. And we'll see you next week. This is Second City Sports Zoom style.
Till next time, holla!